Hello, Jai Bhim, Jai Bhim, Jai Mandal, Jai Pasmanda, Hindu Har, Satrangi Salam. On the behalf of BAPSA-CUG, I would like to thank Rehna Raveendran, Rehnamol Raveendran, uh, that we are going to organize a lecture on contemporary issues which are going on. We see there are so many caste atrocities going on day by day, especially on Dalit. But before coming to our today's topic, firstly, I would like to introduce today's speaker. And Rehnamol Raveendran is an assistant professor at the Delhi University. She completed her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University. She speaks and writes on various social issues, and we have seen many times that she has written in wider dimensions on gender, caste, class, and even on international issues as well. And today's topic is fear of victims and fearlessness of perpetrators in a nation of caste. Reflections from Hathras. And as we know that this Hathras case has become more intensely debated because we saw the role of state in so-called world's largest democratic country in the world, which is actually running by Hindu democracy and Hindu majoritarian. Uh, we will discuss later on these issues because first I would like to invite our today's speaker Rehana, who will speak on today's very relevant and contemporary topic. And Rehana, you can take 40 to 50 minutes, and after that we will take questions, and then we will debate and discuss. Thank you. Again, I would like to uh, thank our today's speaker on the behalf of BAPSA-CUG. Please start.
Jai Bhim, very good evening to all. Thank you, Akash, for that brief introduction. We are here, as Akash has rightly pointed out, that we are here to discuss about Hathras case. I would like to begin with by saying that it is very unfortunate and appalling to discuss a gruesome incident even in this 2020 after 70 years of constitution being placed in this country. As we all know that a girl from Hathras been gang raped by four Thakur men in that village. Her tongue was cut, her head was strangled, her bones were broken, and she was so courageous. For me, what I feel is that she was so courageous. She tried to fought. She tried to fight her life, and she was so courageously fighting her life. Though eventually she succumbed to injuries, and she has, uh, she's died. I can't even say that she's died. She's been even killed. Um, what is what is very important to see here is that while she was so courageous, we can see a state administration being so cowardly, and the cowardly behavior of that state administration eventually led to immediate cremation of that girl's bodies without even letting her family to see her face at least one last time. I was wondering, what has made the state administration so cowardly or to take such cowardly action. For me, the reason or the answer to that cowardly behavior is a kind of collective voice of Dalit resistance that we have seen across the country even after that, after this incident had happened. So I would like to see it as a collective voice of the Dalit consciousness that has made the state administration cowardly and then fearful. before getting into that, of course, it has to be little step forward, and then from the collective conscience of the Dalits, we should have a collective consciousness of all, to fight against the injustices that is happening now on Dalits in this country. So before getting into that collective consciousness and the need to have a collective consciousness of Dalit resistance in this country, I really would like to discuss something, um, on which on a structure that actually facilitates this kind of gruesome incidents uh, to take place. What is that structure within which uh, this kind of gruesome attacks are happening, or it's being defended with a sense of impunity? I would like to see it as a society. If I would like to look at society first, and then what all are the factors that are facilitating this kind of a casteist, feudal, patriarchal kind of attitudes. I would like to see Indian society. Not I would like to see Indian society is actually feudal, patriarchal, casteist, misogynist, and Brahmanical. Of course, Brahmanical again encompasses, whatever I have just listed out. Brahmanical encompasses patriarchal, Brahmanical encompasses misogyny, it encompasses casteism. So I would like to see this in the context of the larger nature of Indian society. Uh, and Indian society, as we all know, that been largely defined by Hindu culture and Brahmanical principles. When Hindus see that Hindu see that Hindu culture as something to take pride. For me, as a woman and a citizen of this country, I don't find that Hindu culture to be very proud, to take pride in that Hindu culture, because that is a culture which decides the worth of an individual based on their birth. That is a culture that makes every individual think that their fellow human beings are impure. I mean, how can I take a pride in a culture that considers the women as a tool to maintain the purity pollution binaries? How can I take a pride in a culture that considers the Dalit women bodies as impure or as a site of violence? I don't think that I can really take pride of that kind of a culture. Even Rohit Vimla, he has put or encapsulate the whole nature of Hindu society in his last words when he said that my birth is my fatal accident. It encapsulates the nature of the Indian society within which even this kind of atrocities are happening unbridled. So Ambedkar had actually, seen, he is one of the foremost feminists, I would say, who had tried to find try to establish a connection between gender and caste. When he has extensively discussed about, the connection between the caste and gender, and he had said that, how the Brahmanical ideology, how the Brahminical ideology in a way, uh, trying to preserve and eulogize certain practices that degrade women. He has highlighted the double maneuver by which the Brahminical ideology eulogizes and preserves the practices that has degraded the Indian woman in general and the Dalit women in particular. He has extensively talked about how there is a kind of violent control over surplus women's sexuality. For example, when he talks about the Brahminical practices, he been talking about how Sati was established and how Sati was institutionalized. So how Sati was even practiced. Not only Sati, the enforced widowhood and institutionalization of child marriage. These all practices were kept to maintain the purity pollution of the caste system. In a way, women are kept as the gatekeepers of casteism. If they are not allowed to move out of their caste structure, then then the Brahminical ideology says that, no, that means it is actually preserving that purity of that particular caste. If women are not going out, women should be kept inside to maintain the purity of the caste. And this is somehow somewhere is in violence of the rights of the women. Ambedkar has extensively talked about it. Even the rise and fall of the Hindu women, he has extensively talked about it. So Brahminical practices such as sati, enforced widowhood, and institutionalization of child marriage, it's all kept as a method of preserving that caste structure. And Ambedkar has talked about caste as endogamy. So in the endogamy, in the sense that there should be a prohibition of the intercaste marriages. So basically what he's trying to say is that women are used as a tool to maintain uh, purity and pollution binaries. And he has again this the control over the violent control over the women's sexuality. In Sadi, women are burnt because they are the surplus women, and then they should not be allowed to go outside their caste system. So they should be their life should end there. So that is what the violent Brahminical methods and the practices that been following in our society. And uh, I mean, Ambedkar had talked about it. Later on in 1993, Professor Uma Chakravarti has, popularized this term Brahminical patriarchy. Of course, Ambedkar had extensively talked about the created patriarchy, Brahminical patriarchy, but again, it has resurfaced in Indian academia or India's public domain. And it's been popularized by Professor Uma Chakravarti in 1993, especially by writing a book, Gendering Caste Through a Feminist Lens. And she has also extensively discussed about how the Brahminical patriarchy existed even during Vedic time or colonial time. And also, Ambedkar has also talked about how this Brahminical ideology or the cultural practices that has suppressed the women or has dismantled the rights of the women being percolated into the lower strata of the society. Just immediately after the lower, I mean the upper strata of the ladder, how the people started imitating those Brahminical and cultural practices that has degraded the women's existence. And he has called it as he has identified it as imitation. And later on, sociologist Evan Srinivas has called it as Sanskritization. So what I'm trying to say is that there has been extensive readings and studies and writings, even starting from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. They have tried to establish a connection between gender and caste, and how the Brahminical practices and cultural practices in a way has kept the women intact, not allowing them to enjoy their rights, and not allowing them to live a life with dignity. And he has Ambedkar has I mean, as I said earlier, he has described this whole phenomenon as something, the gay he has described women as the gateways to casteism. So my question is that even in the rise and fall of in the rise and fall of Hindu women, he has talked about what was the rights or the condition or the status of the women before Manu and pre-Manu era, and during his time, during the Manu times. So he has highlighted, how Manu has degraded the status of women as immoral, or he has described Manu has described women as immoral, impure, and disloyal. So it's very clear that there is a kind of a culture of manusmriti, or a kind of culture that has promoted the degradation of women, that has a culture that has seen women as something as sexual objects. So it has that kind of a Manusmriti's culture, the culture of Manusmriti or the culture of Manu being, it's been existing there in our society. But the question is that whether, just after the independence, after the adoption of a constitution which guarantees equal rights to everyone, equal dignity to everyone, uh, is 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 that practice end, or like is it still is it still persisting? Of course it is still persisting even in contemporary times, even after the constitution being into place, after Ambedkar has talked about constitutional morality or social morality, despite all those attempts made by our great social reformers, leaders like Ambedkar, Savitribai Phule, Jyotiba Phule, there is a kind of a culture of Manusmriti still persisting in our country. So that is not something a history for us. It is not something something has to deal with the past. Even there is a kind of a continuity of that past in contemporary India, if we really look into the things in details. For example, you can still see, after independence, after constitution being into place, you can still see people. Women are under a kind of a veil. You know, especially upper caste households. When you look at women, they are still not allowed to go outside and then to interact with the world, because they are kept within their households, thinking that if they go out, there is a kind of chance of interacting with the so-called lower caste men, or so-called lower caste women. So in a way, if they go out, if they are allowed to if they are allowed to go out, then there is a kind of possibilities of interaction with those people whom they consider as impure, their men consider as impure. So even in contemporary times, you can see, most of the Dalits who belong to the lower strata of the society are going out and then engaging in agricultural activities, different economic activities. Of course, in upper caste households, the women, especially in rural areas, they are not, of course, out, and they are kept within their four walls of the home. And in urban spaces, of course, some of the upper caste women are allowed to go out and then do job. But again, the caste works in a different way in urban spaces and rural spaces. But it is very visible in rural areas, where women are not allowed, especially upper caste women are not allowed to go out. Maybe not maybe because of the fact, but because of the fact that they have a kind of a fear in their mind that if these people are allowed to go out, again, that purity pollution, binaries will be somehow will get faded. And apart from this, keeping women under veil, or like not allowing them to go out, we can really see a lot of incidents, that is actually endorsing that culture based on Manusmriti. For example, even Shabrimala's case, we have seen how the whole things unraveled in Shabrimala case, where people are coming out and then saying that women's bodies are impure, bodies are impure, so they should not be allowed in into the temple. But what is most striking is that even you have a women judge in judiciary to support that kind of a mentality, to support that kind of a mentality which says that women are impure, they should not be allowed into the temple. And it is not just one case, there are a lot other cases. For example, even in Guwahati, I mean, in the premises of Rajasthan High Court, you can see a Manu statue. I mean, I can't. This is something beyond my comprehension. Even within the premise of a court, you can see Manu statue instead of maybe an Ambedkar statue, anything, any constitutional symbols. Instead of a constitutional symbols or Ambedkar statue, you can see a Manu statue. Of course, again, the resistance again came from Dalit women. Two Dalit women had registered their anger against that culture of Manusmriti by trying to blacken that statue. Of course, later on, again, they are also being treated as criminals only because of the fact that they have blackened Manu statue. This is something very paradoxical that once we say that, okay, like once we are resisting against injustice and that person is being treated as a criminal. So this is again the paradox. Apart from the Manus statue that we are seeing in Rajasthan High Court, even Guwahati High Court very recently has passed a judgment, which is for me beyond my, again, beyond my comprehension. Guwahati High Court has allowed a man to get divorced because that man's wife refused to put sindoor or vermilion on her forehead, and the High Court has allowed that man to get divorced from her only because of the fact that she refused to put sindoor. So this is again, I mean, I can only see this as a reflection of a kind of a culture, or a kind of a social morality that Ambedkar was actually resisting against throughout his life. And also, this is something, society is again, trying to restrain the women's mobility, and there is a judiciary somehow unfortunately standing with a kind of a social morality based on religious Hindu religious scriptures. And again, one more factor comes into this whole picture is academia. In Rajasthan, there was I think in 1986 or 1987, I don't remember exact year, one women tried to commit sati. And there was huge debate and discussions around that. And you can see one Indian intellectual, quote unquote intellectual or quote unquote academician, trying to distinguish Sadi as a culture of mythical times, a culture of historical times. Ashish Nandi has basically, of course, he has invited a lot of criticism from the feminist side, but this is something very weird that a academician or an intellectual trying to distinguish Sadi or trying to defend it by distinguishing it as something, a culture which existed in mythical times and historical times. Um, Again, we are celebrating that kind of a public intellectual. That is, again, paradox. And also we can see so many Indian intellectuals coming and saying that, oh, my Hinduism is better than yours, this is not what the Hinduism that I was envisioning for, your Hinduism is something completely against my belief, and your Rama is not my Rama. You know whom I am indicating to. I'm actually trying to bring some of the narratives that been brought by academicians like Pradhabanu Mehta, Yogendra Yadav. Basically, I would like to see it as, it's an argument saying that my filth is better than your filth. That is the kind, I mean, when they say that my Rama is better than your Rama or my Hinduism is better than your Hindutva, I really find that argument as my filth is better than your filth. But they don't understand filth is filth. This is something that we have to really ponder over. And what I'm trying to say is that here you have how the patriarchy or the violence against women being created or nurtured or kind of facilitated by a kind of a structure. There is a kind of a nexus between these actors. It's not just society, judiciary is there, Indian academia is there, intellectuals are there, and then one more factor again, this in Hathras case, I've seen one remarkable feature that been very noticeable during this Hathras case was there is a kind of a resentment and anguish from upper caste liberals against this particular incident. That is something, yes, I was thinking, okay, there is a kind of anguish and there is a kind of resentment against what had happened. But eventually over the period of time, what I've realized is that their anger is somehow misdirected. Their anger is somehow misdirected at the political establishment alone. They've been they've been talking against how the Ajay Bish government has dealt the whole case, and then how they mishandle the whole case. There is a huge backlash against Yogi government and his administration, state administration. Of course, I completely agree with the fact that there is a kind of a mismanagement and mishandling of the case by the state administration. But when you look at the anchors of the upper caste liberals, you can see that anchor is just against a political establishment. Maybe because of the fact that they have a kind of a difference in political ideology, or they don't belong to that particular political party which is now ruling the state UP. But that's a reductionist approach. They are not basically challenging the kind of a brahminical hegemony and the upper caste culture that has engendered a kind of a violence against women in general and Dalit women in particular. They are not challenging, they are not challenging that Hindu culture. They are not challenging that brahminical practices. Maybe because of the fact that they are, again, they can really relate to that good Hindu narratives. So what I'm trying to say is that this misdirected anger against political establishment will not resolve the issue. You will have to challenge those roots that been perpetuating violence against women. And when I talk about the upper caste liberals in India, one of the journalists, the prominent journalist. She was once seen in a photo with some of the Dalit women, and when the Twitter CEO had visited India, so there was a kind of a controversy over that photo erupted out. That photo was this Twitter CEO was seen with this journalist, prominent journalist, and some other Dalit women, and Dalit women were upholding a poster saying Brahminical patriarchy. So all of a sudden, in social media, the huge controversy erupted out, and saying that, oh, I mean, this is not Brahminical patriarchy. You are trying to malign the images of Brahmin. So the journalist who featured in that photo, she later on tweeted, saying that. In a way, in a very sophisticated way, she tried to justify her existence in that photo, and later on she was saying that this is a business of Dalit women. I mean, is that a business of Dalit women alone? I don't think. I think that's a very lunatic approach to say that Brahminical patriarchy is a Dalit women's business. Brahminical patriarchy is a business of upper caste women also, because it's not only affects the Dalit women, it also affects the existence and the dignity of the upper caste women in this country. So the upper caste liberals of this country should always look at the roots, and if you really want to, if the upper caste liberals really want to to have a closure on gender violence that been happening in our country, there should be a kind of challenge towards what we call Brahminical hegemony or upper caste culture. And what I'm trying to say, that there is a kind of the whole system. There is society, there is a judiciary, there is a kind of an intelligentsia or academicians or upper caste liberals, trying to kind of preserving that filthy system, you know called Brahminical system and a Hindu culture. There is a kind of I mean, they are in a way contributing to that process or that system which engenders violence. I think that has to be changed. Society should be, of course, reformed, and upper caste liberals should really rethink, and the academicians should stop engendering this kind of a narrative, which is actually inimical to women's dignity. And one important thing I really would like to stress here is that the factor of impunity. As as this lecture's title rightly say, there is a kind of an impunity among the perpetrators. Even in the whole episode of Hathras, when I was watching all those videos that was getting released on social media, what I could really sense was that I was watching even that girl's brother when standing in front of the hospital, and then the journalist was asking him, what do you want to say? What do you want to say one last time about this particular thing? And he was completely silent. he was bowing his head down and he was completely silent. I could really sense, what he was going through. Or it was not just, a silence of a brother who just lost his sister. It was something beyond that, which can be traced in this social system, which is based on chaturvanya. You are making an individual psychology in such a way that even that individual, even if the rights are with him, or even if he hasn't committed any mistake, still that social system is making him completely silent. He can't even raise his voice. And after that, you can see how, the mother, the girl's mother, how she was crying over the bonnet of the ambulance. And then how the DM was talking to the girl's father, saying that, this journalist will go tomorrow and we will remain here. It's a kind of a threat. It's a kind of indirect threat. Imagine the arrogance in the words of the DM. It is not just about two individuals, power denominations. It shows the power denomination that is existing in a society, not only in an individual space, even in a social space. And again, one more visual was very disturbing, where one teenager boy from the girl's family running towards to journalist, and then he wants to convey something. He wants to convey that how his family members are having problem, being under the state captivity. And immediately you can see the boy was running again back into the paddy fields in fear of something. This is something very disturbing. When the victims are confronting this kind of fear, on the other side you can see two Thakur men um, screaming, and they are shouting. And then the toxic masculinity, the toxic masculinity was very much evident in that video. And then they are screaming and they're shouting with a sense of impunity in the presence of policemen, saying that, okay, we will take the revenge. And you can again see that the girl's family talking to ASP leader Chandrasekhar Azad, saying that, no, we are feeling insecure here. Why are they feeling insecure? They are not the perpetrators. Perpetrators are roaming freely with a sense of impunity, but the victims are crying over, saying that we don't feel secure here. So this is a kind of, that factor of impunity. How this has been created? How this impunity been created among the perpetrators? And again, that is facilitated by the power equations that we have seen in the society, in the administration, in the polity. So what is the way out? How can we break this sense of impunity among the perpetrators? And how can we think of, administering justice to the victims who really want to have a closure of this kind of atrocities, even on their fellow human beings? So what I would like to say is that, what is a way out? If you really see, there is a kind of over representation of, upper caste people with a kind of a social morality. Not even, what I'm saying is that, there is a kind of a representation of upper caste, or representation of upper caste in the administration, in the polity. There should be, we should democratize that spaces of administration. We should democratize that spaces of state administration. We should include more people from the marginalized into the state administration. There comes the significance of representation. Representation is not just about, people getting some jobs and then they are having an improvement in their life. No, the significance of reservation is very much evident even in this Hathras case. Had there been representation of, people who belong to marginalized, I don't think that, this situation would have happened. There should be, because this representation is not just only about the jobs. It's also about making the spaces more democratized, making those spaces of state administration more inclusive. This has to be clearly understood. Representation is not just about jobs. It's also about making the society inclusive, administration inclusive. It's all about democratizing the spaces. And another thing is that we been now there been a kind of a uproar, in terms of demanding how to civilize the upper caste people in this country, because there is a kind of even during lockdown there have been there has been unbridled atrocities and unleashed on Dalits. I mean, what is this? I mean, we have to really civilize the upper caste people in this country. We have to really humanize them. I'm not saying that this is a responsibility of the Dalits alone. No, this is not the responsibility of the marginalized or the so-called lower caste section of this country. This is the responsibility of the upper caste too. This is the responsibility of all the citizens to make this country more inclusive, to make this country more livable for everyone. And also again, then there comes the role of the upper caste liberals who've been saying that, okay, we are good Hindus. If we are good Hindus, then why are you not making those bad Hindus good? It is your responsibility then. If you are saying that there is a good Hindu, bad Hindu, so make those bad Hindus good, at least for the nation's sake, at least for the fellow human beings' sake. So this responsibility not just lies on Dalits. This responsibility lies on the upper caste people in this country, and this is not just for Dalits. This is for the people also. This is for all people. This is for the whole nation. This is for the democratic ideals that we've been cherishing ever since we got the constitution, and ever since we had our leaders who've been talking about dignity, rights, justice, fraternity. um, and having said that, I also would like to add one more point. When I was at the beginning, I was talking about the kind of the collective consciousness of Dalit resistance. I agree with the fact that that Ambedkarite movement cannot be just confined to certain larger events. It is something that been happening at the micro level also. There have been people at the grassroots level talking about change, and through writings, through discussions, debates. Every individual, especially who believes in Ambedkar ideology or upholding the Ambedkarite values, they've been contributing to the movement. But what I feel is that somewhere, somehow, there is a kind of uh, lack of common platform for all of us to come together. I think there is a need to channelize the whole energy, which is getting scattered now, even though there is a kind of an individual efforts, organization efforts. So many groups are coming forward and then trying to make a change in their own little ways. But there is a need to have a kind of, we need to channelize that into a common platform. And I'm saying this also because of the fact that there is a need to have a political representation now. There is a need to have a political power now. I'm here trying to upload Kanshi Ram's vision. I'm trying to highlight here what Ambedkar had talked about political power. He said the key is the political power. So it's not just that we will have to, I mean, of course, at the societal level, there is a kind of a movement, but we have to really channelize those movement and those energy into a political platform where we can ensure the representation of our people. Uh, I mean, as we all know that we don't want to ensure the chamcha yuga of Dalit politics. Of course, we need to have a independent Dalit assertion. And I'm very happy with the fact that there is a kind of an emergence of political parties such as Azad Samaj Party, and Bhim Army is of course been at the forefront, in bringing the changes that Ambedkar had envisioned, or Kanchiram had envisioned. So my whole point is that we need to really channelize our energy into a common political platform, whichever political platform that comes up with a kind of a vision of an independent political assertion. We should really go and support and then be a part of that independent political assertion. This is not something. um, what I'm trying to say is that we really need to kind of forge an independent political assertion, which is the need of the day. And also, Hathras case should be a wake up call for all of us who've been divided who been divided on different political ideologies. Yeah, I mean, in the sense that there are some people who belong to marginalized countries relying on different political streams, whom Kanchiram had described as chamchas. What I'm trying to say is that we have a strong Ambedkarite ideology. And I think we should realize the strength of that ideology. There is a moral righteousness embedded in that ideology. We should really trust that ideology, and then we will not be confused. And of course, we should really, really look or we should really stand up for a independent Dalit political assertion, which is the need of the hour. Hathras case is an example of that. And had Kanchiram been there, or had Kanchiram been there in the government, or had Kanchiram been running the government, I don't think that the situation would have happened, or the kind of mishandling that happened during this in this Hathras incident would have happened had Kanchiram been there. So that is the significance of an independent political assertion. We should really go for it, whichever political party. I mean, for me, what I feel is that ASP is a kind of it gives that kind of a hope. Um, Whichever political party that comes up with a kind of independent Dalit political assertion, we should support it, and we should have a common political platform. Just the social reformation is not enough. We really need to have a political representation, political leaders from our community, so that we can have a livable life with dignity and self-respect. I think I can conclude my talk by by appealing all the people to really assert politically, along with a kind of a social movement. So thank you so much, CG Babsa, for organizing this lecture and giving me this platform to share some of my thoughts. Thank you so much, Akash, and then CG Babsa.
Uh, Thanks, Rehna, for your thoughtful lecture. And you really pointed out all those problems actually in right wing domination in Indian democracy. And we have seen in Hathras case when Thakur Ajay Singh Bist was completely silent. And even we can see our Prime Minister Narendra Das Damodar Das Modi, he was also silent on this issue. Then we can see how the whole Hindu framework, Hindu means domination of twice Varna caste or Varna and twice Varna caste. If you see the 238 or 39 family of Ravidas community converted in Buddhism on 14 October. In that case, the day before yesterday, the Ghaziabad DM went in their locality of Ravidas and
Hmm.
Valmiki locality, and he told that you cannot convert. This is very serious issue. Whole system, administrative system, who is on one side, who is involved to save the victim in Hathras case, how all those administration under the leadership of a Hindu Thakur Ajay Singh Bist is involving in in the case of conversion. They are saying that you cannot convert. One thing. Another thing also we can see that if you talk about any Hindu organization, they will say that Buddhism is part of Hinduism. But
Hmm.
this is not reality because Buddhism is world religion, or Hinduism is not world religion. That is true.
Hmm.
And another thing is also we are talking about Dalit consciousness. If you see the movement from the time of Dalit Panther movement to now, there's so many up and down the movement we have seen during the Kasiram Saab time when we see in Uttar Pradesh the method, the way he was mobilizing the people, and now we can see same method. What was the method adopted by Kasiram Saab? Now Chandrasekhar Azad is doing the same thing. Why I'm saying here?
Hmm.
Because in our side, uh, Chandrasekhar have not gone any time. Even now, he never visited in our district. But there we can see how Bhim Army is working there on any social issues. If anything is happening wrong with not only with Dalit, even I saw even the case of NRC, CA, how they were the way through which they were protesting, even on the issue of Bahujan, how uh, they are coming on the front. And one more interesting thing I found with Bhim Army is that they are directly threat to right wing forces because they are coming with the counter culture. There are so many political parties on the name of Bahujan, but except few, none of them directly come in counter of the right wing culture, where Bhim Army we can see is doing that you rightly point out. And now I think we have some question. We should come to the question also. And uh, first question is here from Ramchet Yadav. Ramchet ask in the name of culture, the orthodox practices are imposing through the government that is really against constitutionality. How can to overcome this attitude of the government as well as society?
Huh. Okay, so this is something again. If the attitude of the government is not changing, change the government. I mean that's what I'm talking about. See, when we talk about if the attitude of the government is not changing, we should change the government. In this, here comes the significance of an independent Dalit political assertion again, and also when we talk about society, that's what I said. The Dalits have always been, or the marginalized, the people belong to marginalized country, I mean, marginalized section, been always very democratic. So there is no doubt over it, but the thing is that we have to really forge a kind of a solidarity with those people who belong to upper caste and then who call themselves as liberals, and there is a need to have a collective conscience of everyone saying that, see, this is not something that is we need. This, we don't need religious consciousness, and we need a civic consciousness. So civic consciousness is not just, we have to really put this point forward that we as a country need to have a civic consciousness which nourishes that democratic ideals of justice, liberty, and fraternity. So this civic consciousness is not just for the Dalit community. This civic consciousness is for everyone, even for general caste women, or for each and every citizen of this country. This is not something that, okay, we are the one who been at the receiving end of the violence. Everyone has their own bit share of being at the receiving end of the atrocities or injustices. So once we demand for a kind of a civic consciousness, and then there is a collective attempt to forge a kind of a civic consciousness in this country, I think we can have a way forward. And one thing I really want to stress here is that, in especially in Kerala's case, where I come from, uh, the question of course encompasses that religious transformation also, because I know a bit of bit regarding the social changes and social reformation that happened in Kerala, where so many religious reformers, from Sri Narayana Guru to Ayyankali, Dakshani Velai, then Poige Lappachan, Sahodar Nayappan. There was a huge number of leaders there fighting against injustices. So that, we call it as an enlightenment period of Kerala. Then the society, there is a kind of a transformation only because of the kind of the contribution given by those social reformist leaders of Kerala, and then now a kind of the change is there in our society. But this social transformation or a social reformation thing is not, to some extent it is absent in some other states like UP or Rajasthan or Haryana. That social churning is not happening. But and again, one thing again, Kerala has to learn something from UP kind of a state, is an independent Dalit political assertion under Country Ram. We have to really learn from each other and try to kind of build up a strategy. What I'm trying to say is that we need to have, and that's what again, the Bhim Army and ASP, I find it's a best example because of the fact that it's a combination of both. Bhim Army and ASP is a combination of both, because social and political. When Bhim Army is socially trying to mobilize people, or trying to give a vision to people in terms of in terms of Ambedkarite ideals, and ASP is trying to have an independent political assertion. So what is there in Kerala? Social reformation is there, but political assertion is not there from the Dalit side. But in UP kind of a state, social reformation to some extent is absent, but political independent political assertion happened there. So we have to really combine these two, and also we have to develop a universal language of our movement, which is of course there. We have a universal language, we have a universal language of moral righteousness, but that universal language must be accepted by the upper caste, so-called upper caste liberals and other sections, because this is something that is needed. We have to really understand the ideals of an Ambedkarite movement, and there should be kind of what like we have to really appeal others, and also others should also understand what Ambedkarite ideals means, and social transformation and political independent assertion is the key.
Uh, Thank you, Rehna. We have other two questions. Uh, this is question of Pradhani Bad. He asks, in the contemporary period, caste and gender-based violence are growing, and in this case, the government, administrative, police department, judiciary, and those so-called upper caste progressive feminists are silent and supporting to the culprits. In this situation, what is the solution to stop these types of inhuman activities?
The solution is really multi-pronged. What I always find this in terms, I really try to find the solution of this kind of problems in two things. One is constitutional morality, and then social morality. Again, that civic consciousness also, that fact also comes in. When people think in terms of in terms of a social morality, what happens is that the constitutional democratic ideals are somehow getting submerged. So there is a need to this people who been in the administration, or who been in the power positions, are actually socially conditioned. They are still not able to internalize what the constitution been providing, what the constitutional morality been teaching us. They are somehow not able to internalize that constitutional morality. So again, that the whole secularism debate comes in here. How the way the Indian academicians and intellectuals who belong to a particular caste and class, they have completely messed up with the secularist discourse. Because when you talk about, okay, your religion, my religion, so what happens is that somehow, somewhere, the religious morality, of course, that the religious morality that always disfavored the women's rights and all, somehow it's been getting defended. Okay, I have a freedom to profess my religion, you have a freedom to profess your religion, but we should rather make it as a private affair. If not public affair, at least to a minimum, you keep it as a private affair, you keep it in your pocket, so that we can have really some time to develop a kind of a civic consciousness and constitutional morality in the public domain. So this whole idea of social morality and then religious scriptures and then their teaching should be replaced by the constitution and the constitutional ideals. So that is one thing. Again, in legal, again, I talked about representation. We really need to have representation in the state administration, so that there would be an ensuring of administering of justice to the victims. When the whole administration is homogeneous, when the whole administration is just filled up by some upper caste men, especially with a kind of a social morality, I don't think that we can really expect some justice from that system. So we really need to have a kind of a increase in the representation of the marginalized, and also again the legal measures are always there in place, and there should be a proper implementation of the legal measures, and again to administer those legal measures, who are there in the administration. This is what I've been stressing, that we need to have an increase of representation of the marginalized. It's not just about a job, it's also about how to democratize those spaces, how to make those spaces inclusive, how to ensure justice to those victims who are at the receiving being end of the violence. So, and again, a political assertion, we really need to have a kind of government, which can actually teach people. I don't think that the current ruling dispensation in the UP would come up and then say that, okay, we will humanize the people, we will civilize the upper caste women, or we will talk about a constitutional morality instead of a social morality. I don't think that. For that, we really need to form a government which believes in Ambedkarite ideology or principles, which has more moral righteousness and universal applicability.
Thank you, Rana. The number of question is increasing time to time. Uh, I think we can take 2 or 3 questions now. Can you take?
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay, okay. Um, this is question from Ramchit. Bahujan's engagement with the Hindutva culture actually has an obstacle to the fight for social justice. In which context you comprehend these problems?
Okay. So
Engagement
even
of Bahujan with Hindutva culture.
yeah, so Hindu culture and then the Bahujan this thing. Um, Ambedkar has identified, his identification. He identified it as a problem of imitation. How the Brahminical practices uh, been copied by the people of the lower strata of the society. And as I said earlier, also Srinivas also has talked about is that as Sanskritization. But also, what is the silver lining here is that there is a kind of a resistance and movement against that Hindu culture, because we can now see even at the grassroots, people are replacing their Hindu goddesses or gods photos, and then we can see too many Ambedkarite statues being placed, and even in weddings. And also, I've been to UP, and then I've seen how people are now celebrating their weddings with Ambedkar's portrait. So, and the silver lining is there. But what I'm trying to say is that, again, that desanskritization process, it is somehow somewhere confined to just Dalits. Dalits, I mean, again, Dalit Bahujan, in that distinction, I'm saying it is that resistance against that Hindu culture is so vehement among the Dalit community, but somehow, somewhere, that is absent, if you go a bit up, especially when I say, this Bahujans, especially, like, I would call them as OBCs, where I've seen too many of Hindu ritualization. And even the political leaders, you can see, the political leaders, especially from OBC community, how they are appealing, especially in UP's context, how Akhilesh Yadav, I mean, Yadav is talking about Krishna. I mean, that there should be a kind of a desanskritization process across the communities. It should not be just confined to the Dalit groups. It should be, of course, there in the intermediate caste also, so that we can really come up with a solid counter to the dominant Hindu culture. But that process is, again, it's something, it's evolution. It's a kind of an evolution. It will change according to the time. I hope that even I'm not saying that no all Dalits are completely desanskritized, but the movement is still there. I think over the period of time, I hope that, because we have to really talk about it. We have to really come up with certain narratives. We should have a knowledge production so that people understand. We have to have an interaction with the society. So I think, like, with that process and movement, I think eventually that will happen. I think that, again, responsibility is on our shoulders, and especially those who understand things. And then we have to really build up a strong narratives against that, as Ambedkar did. So the process is on.
Okay. Then I also think if the people who come from social movement will catch the power, political power, then also through state power, we can deconstruct. One can deconstruct this uh, culture of Brahminical culture. And Hindi belt, in whole Hindi belt, especially UP and Bihar, if we see the major leader, uh, from Bahujan community, especially OBC and Dalit, uh, they are not openly talking against the Brahminical culture. That is another problem. And
Hmm.
the same question is related with these things by Ramchet Yadav. He asks the main leadership from political parties BSP and ASP being away in reaching to Hathras, but they were more active on Twitter. These kinds of politics from Bahujan Samaj really disappointed. Please highlight on this attitude of politics.
Okay. When I look at disappointment is there, especially especially when we expect from a leader that he or she would be there with the victim's family. So when we don't see them, with the victim's family, it is quite disappointing. But also, one thing is that, but again, that's what I'm always tell my friends also that what ASP is doing is, I know we should not be very I mean, prejudgmental of anything. Let's see, how the ASP would take up their vision of politics forward. But somehow, somewhere, that silver lining is there. When Chandrasekhar Azad is going there and then reaching out to the family and then talking to them, I don't think that they were confined to Twitter. Rather, Bhima. I mean, you know, uh, this people even actually this Hathras movement reminded me of Una movement because you could see people littering, people throw garbage in DM's house. And ASP Bhim Army people had gone to even UP Legislative Assembly premises and then they threw garbage there, which is actually reminded me of Unnao movement where people threw carcasses, in government premises. So I don't think that their activities are just confined to Twitter. And some of the political parties, of course, they made a drama. Some people made a drama. Some people, try to reach out. Some people just confined to Twitter. But what I'm trying to say is that, as a Dalit independent political assertion, so we have certain limitations within our own electoral system. Okay, when we talk about FPTP, of course, the discussion comes on joint electorate, separate electorate. The not proposed representation are for us, but there is a kind of a limitations within the electoral system of India. But again, when I think about Kanshiram's politics, he was also within the limitations of that FPTP, but he could still form that government which is based on an Ambedkarite ideology or an Ambedkarite ideals. So what I'm basically trying to say is that silver lining is there. I could see a kind of an independent political Dalit assertion, and with of course, the major challenge is that how we are going to confront the limitations of the existing electoral system. So that we have to really discuss and then we have to really debate. But also I think that if we really trying to build up a kind of a universal language. I'm not saying that no, this BSP's Bahujan Sukhaya, Bahujan Hitaya, I'm not talking about any kind of appropriation of any particular caste or class. But when we talk about civic consciousness, or when we talk about to to nurture a kind of a constitutional culture or a democratic culture, that's for all. I mean, if others are not accepting, that means that shows how castes they are. If the people are not able to accept a kind of an independent Dalit political association without appropriation, again we need to change the caste of minds then. So this is something what I'm trying to say. This is a whole process which needs time. I think, like, people are now really becoming more vocal. Even from our community, people are changing. Even I could see some of the media people conducting a program past the mic. So this is all some little civil lining. I think, like, we can have a kind of a good society or a good nation, nation without caste. We can really envision about it, because we really need to keep on working. We really need to keep on come up with the strong narratives, and we have to really really interact with the society, and we have to also stand with those independent political assertion. That's what, again, my major point. We have to really stand up with the independent Dalit political assertion. We should not be prejudgment. We should not be judgmental. Let's forge a kind of a solidarity and support among everyone.
Rena, we have one question. I think this is last question.
Yeah.
This question asked by former president of BAPSA Havaldar Bharti. He asked,
Hmm.
we always wake up when rape occurred, but we always sleep about issues of women's representation and their rights. What is your opinion? He's asking your opinion.
Okay, yeah, this even to some extent, even I also think that, when something of the gruesome incident happened, then all of a sudden, our conscience gets flared up, So we always need to have I agree with that to some extent, because we always need to have a dead body, a body which is not of, I mean, we always need to have a dead body to to push forward our movement. This is something even I also I'm a bit disappointed with the fact that when Rohit Vemla incident happened, then also we were waiting for a person to die, and then we are making that human die again. I'm not saying that we don't, of course, the movement is still on, but somehow, when this kind of a gruesome incident happens, then our conscience get flared up. I to some extent I agree with that, but I think, like, see, again, what I'm trying to say is that Ambedkarite movement, it's, I can only talk about an Ambedkarite movement. Ambedkarite movement is not something that that is based on one particular issue. It's not something that that movement just it sleeps when this kind of incident doesn't happen. It's not like that. I think, like, our movement has always been there at the microscopic level, and at an individual level, at a community level, even from the groups, that movement is still there. But the thing is that, when these things get a kind of a coverage, because again, that whole wake up call is for the upper caste liberals, or the upper caste media. Okay, they all of a sudden try to come up with the coverage, and then they show that, oh, this is what is happening. And that, again, image creation, which is, that image creation is under the control of the upper caste media, or upper caste or media platforms. So to some extent, what I'm trying to say is that, some of the issues are showed in such a way that, okay, this is the issue, now we have to really take care of it. But as Ambedkarite movement, we have always been there. And of course, women's representation, it's not just about, again, what I'm trying to say is that women representation is not just about the responsibility of the Dalits, or Ambedkarite. And there should be a kind of a conscience building of other people also, who belong to other caste also. I think, like, we really need to, I mean, see, it's all about how to just get rid of this social mentality from their minds. It's all about, I can only talk about civic consciousness, constitutional morality, constitution. You keep your religion in your pocket, and then talk about the rights of the women, talk about the rights of the people, rights of the individuals. So I think, like, what I'm trying to say is that we are now bringing up with certain narratives. I think that it's going to be successful. I have a hope.
Uh, Thank you, Rehna. I think we can also think about that. The Havaldar asked, we always wake up when Dev Dakar. I think because the majority of the Bahujan people are who are excluded from public, we can say public sphere. Especially Dalit, if you see their settlement, settlement of house, it's approximately about out of the village, we can see. And in the villages, their condition are so worse than any other uh, caste we see. Another problem is that the people who are raising voices are, so we can say, social activists or political activists. There is lack between the people who are suffering problem on the ground level and the people who are raising our voice at the upper level. That may be social activists or political activists. There is need of a cadre, I think, at the level of division to district, from district to block, block to villages. Then we can easily uh, can get the information that our people who are on the ground level, what kind of problem they are facing. That Kasiram Saab made that time when he started Bahujan movement, and in Uttar Pradesh, during that time there was a problem there was a problem with, especially lower OBC was that. In OBC there are few castes who are landholding and politically well off, but
Hmm.
major OBC, which is called EBC, extremely backward classes, very few land holding community or landless community. They had no voice. But when after intervention of Kasiram Saab politics in Uttar Pradesh, they also become more powerful. And through cadre, many of the leaders who came in not only in Uttar Pradesh politics, even at the politics of the central level. We can hear the speech of Lautan Ram Nisad. He openly says, I do not believe in Ram because I what the opportunity I get, all this opportunity I get from constitution because the struggle of Mahatma Phule Baba Sahib. He is from EBC. Om Prakash Rajbhar is also from EBC community. He was also saying, uh, we got this opportunity because of our constitution, not because of any god and goddess. This kind of leadership emerges from the struggle of the people, and there was a cadre uh, who was uh, who was working as a breeze from the what was the problem of the ground people actually, and all those problems at the people who are who are more away from them can easily get and understand. And I think also we have need to do that. And Bhim Army is doing the same things. How Bhim Army is raising the issues of ground level people. In many cases, we have seen how Bhim Army went to Thana and they start protest there. Why are you not writing the FIR against of the Dalits? So this kind of thing is happening, and we hope very soon the cadre politics will be there, and Bahujan Samaj one day will get and will overcome from this Brahmanical system that you rightly told that we are seeing the changes how the people are in married card we can see Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Lohiya, Gautam Buddha instead of God and Goddess. Change thing is changing day by day, and really the things will change now. Once upon when in the beginning when we started BAPSA here, the in the core committee of BAPSA, 50% people come from uh, uh, here. 40 to 50% people here in BAPSA from OBC community. You can find, and the first committee when we established here in our all post of BAPSA-CUG, 50% there were women and 50% were male. We are always to uh, trying to do justice.
Including.
At what extent that is possible? Because 100% justice is not possible. At what level we can achieve the justice? We are trying to do that from our organization, and in the future, if you go anywhere, we will try to do the same things. And on the behalf of BAPSA, again, I would like to thank because you give your valuable time, and we know that very well. Uh, uh, I know many of my friends who are teaching in Delhi University. Whenever I talk to them, they are always talking about their busy schedule, how they are busy, and it is very difficult for them to uh, give time still. And you gave your valuable time, and we are very thankful to you. And on the behalf of BAPSA, again, uh, we are very thankful to you. You accepted our invitation and delivered a beautiful lecture, thought-provoking lecture, and not only as a lecture, even the two-way communication through question or debate discussion. And in future, we hope you will again enlighten. Again, I would like to thank Jai Bhim, Jai Mandal, Hul Johar, Satarangi Samaj, Salam, Jai Patri.
Jai Bhim.